Do you actually believe those Swiss guards in their colorful outfits stand guard day and night just to protect a bunch of electricity bills and some boring diplomatic letters from 2 millennia? Please, don't be so naive. It insults our intelligence. What the church is trembling to hide beneath those air-conditioned vaults isn't administrative paperwork, but evidence of the most brutal purge in history. The total erasure of Sophia, divine wisdom, the embodiment of the sacred feminine. Look back. What did they do? They burned books, silenced mystics, and executed the most spectacular scam, turning Mary Magdalene, the one Jesus kissed on the mouth, the real boss who held the wisdom, into a call girl in need of forgiveness. Why? Simple. Because that all-boys club established by Constantine at Nicaea understood perfectly. If you realize God also wears a female face, and enlightenment lies right inside you rather than needing to be dispensed by someone, then their seat of power would collapse faster than a sandcastle before a tsunami. But bad news for Rome. The truth doesn't know how to die. It is just waiting to rise from the grave to collect an old debt. I am Zorro, the one who digs up what people want buried tight. Welcome back to Dark History. They call it the Vatican Secret Archives. 25 miles of shelving, protected by the gunmen of the Swiss Guard, and a security system that even MI6 spies would be wary of. Less than 100 souls on this planet of 8 billion are allowed to step inside. They tell you, in the sweetest, reassuring tone, that down there is just administrative paperwork. Papal correspondence, candle bills, boring diplomatic treaties accumulated over 2,000 years of bureaucracy. That is a lie wrapped in silk and gold, because hidden in those strictly temperature-controlled vaults are not bills. It is evidence of a crime, evidence of the most massive spiritual assassination in human history. The victim is not a flesh and blood human. The victim is an idea. It is Sophia. Sophia. Sounds like the name of the girl next door, doesn't it? But in Greek it means wisdom. Not IQ-style intelligence, but divine wisdom. And here is the slap in the face to rigid dogmas. Sophia is the embodiment of the feminine, a great feminine consciousness that existed before Jesus even set foot on this earth. The first Christians, those Rome called the Gnostic heretics, they knew her. They spoke to her. To them, she was not an abstract concept. She was as vivid as breath. But then, Rome realized something terrifying. Her existence threatened the very seat of power they were sitting on. Think about it. If God's wisdom is a woman, then why do men have the monopoly on ruling this world? That is why, for 2,000 years, they have done everything to erase her. Burned books, silenced prophets, rewrote history in ink made of blood. But my friends, you can kill a human, but you cannot kill an idea. Ancient prophecies are whispering that she is returning. And the panic you see in the Vatican lately, the scandals, the decline in believers, that isn't a PR crisis. That is sheer terror as they realize they can no longer control this awakening. The question for you tonight isn't, is Sophia real? It is, can you handle the truth knowing you've been lied to your entire life? Forget what you were taught in Sunday school, that clean version of Christianity where 12 bearded men followed the Lord and unified all doctrine. That is a version that has been whitewashed more thoroughly than a shirt in a TV commercial. Historical reality is much dirtier and far more brilliant. In 1896, in Cairo, an ancient text was found, buried in the sands of time. It is called the Gospel of Mary, a ticking time bomb dating back to the 2nd century. And its content? It tears apart the ridiculous myth the church wove in the 6th century about Mary Magdalene. We all know that story. Mary Magdalene, the repentant whore, the sinful woman washing the Lord's feet with tears. A beautiful image of forgiveness, right? Dead wrong. That was a classic character assassination. This text reveals a truth that made the bishops of that time grind their teeth. Mary Magdalene was not a courtesan. She was the disciple Christ loved most. She was the living embodiment of Sophia on earth. Listen to this part, quoted directly from that ancient text, where Peter, yes, Saint Peter, the keeper of the keys to heaven, is having a fit of jealousy. He asks the other disciples with animosity, "Did he really speak privately with a woman and not openly to us? Are we to turn about and all listen to her? Did he prefer her to us?" What do you hear in that voice? Insecurity. Threat. Peter represents the law, the rigid institution. And Mary? She represents direct understanding. And the text confirms Peter's fear. It says the Lord often kissed her on the mouth. Stop right there. Don't let your mind run with a cheap Hollywood script. This isn't a romantic scandal. In the symbolic language of Gnosticism, the kiss is the transfer of breath, the sharing of spirit, pneuma. Christ represents knowledge. Mary represents wisdom. Their union is the perfect balance of the universe. Without Sophia, Christ is only half the truth. This wasn't some small cult in a cave. These communities flourished across the Mediterranean. They had theological texts so sophisticated they make Orthodox canon law look like children's reading books. Take, for example, the Pistis Sophia, Faith and Wisdom, a massive work recording the teachings of the Lord after the resurrection. And guess who is the star of the book? Not Peter, not Paul. It is Mary Magdalene. She asks 39 out of 46 questions in the text. She is not a sinner begging for forgiveness. She is the top student of the class, the only one who truly understood the master's lecture. But here is the darkest and most profound part. Pistis Sophia reveals that Sophia is not just wisdom, she is a part of God that chose to fall. She chose to leave the realm of light, plunging herself into this chaotic material world, getting trapped, enduring suffering. For what? To experience separation, to guide all souls, that is me and you, to find the way back home. Sound familiar? Look back at your life for a second. That empty feeling at 3 a.m., the feeling of being lost in a crowd, the feeling that you belong to a place more brilliant than this one. The church tells you that is sin, that is weakness. But the Gnostics and Sophia say, no, that is not a mistake. That is the journey. You are walking the path of Sophia. She is both the guide and the companion suffering with us in this material cage. This isn't new. The Jews call her Shekinah, the presence of God among the exiles. The Egyptians called her Isis. The Indians call her Shakti. Every great civilization knew. The divine masculine provides the seed, the logos, but the divine feminine provides the womb, where the word becomes flesh. So why? Why have you never heard of this in Sunday Mass? Why was half of God's face torn from the holy paintings? Because Rome knew the mathematics of power. If wisdom is feminine, if women can be apostles, if you can connect directly with God through inner experience, Gnosis, without intermediaries, then the church, with its hierarchy, priests, bishops, and tithes, becomes useless. They couldn't let that happen. And so, the most brutal purge campaign in history began. But to understand how they did it, a plan so genius and cruel that even Hitler would have to take notes, we must go back in time to the year 325, to a lakeside city named Nicaea, where the fate of the Western world was decided not by God, but by an emperor. For the first time in history, bishops from all over the world were summoned. They arrived by chariot, by boat, carrying scrolls and differing faiths. Sounds like a peace summit, a great spiritual awakening, right? Mistake. It was the most brutal, hostile takeover in history. And the CEO of this deal was Emperor Constantine. Constantine had a big problem. His empire was vast but cracking. Instead of being the glue holding society together, Christianity at the time was a chaotic hot pot. In Alexandria, they worshipped Sophia, feminine wisdom. In Syria, Mary Magdalene was considered the apostle to the apostles, and worst of all, for an emperor, were the Gnostics. Why were they bad? Because they believed they could chat directly with God. No intermediary, no priest, no tithes, and certainly no need for an emperor claiming to be God's representative on earth. How do you rule a crowd that believes spiritual power lies within themselves? You can't. How do you build an empire based on a religion that empowers women and dreamers? You can't. Constantine didn't care about theology. He needed compliance. He needed a religion that served the empire, not one that challenged it. And the divine feminine, with its emphasis on intuition and equality, was enemy number one of this new world order. Therefore, the Council of Nicaea was not about finding the truth. It was about redefining the truth. And anyone who didn't fit into that narrow frame became a target. A formal spiritual war began. But this time, the weapons were not just swords and spears. The weapon was cultural erasure. Gnostic communities were disbanded. Leaders were hunted down like criminals. Sacred texts, books containing Sophia's wisdom, were confiscated and thrown into massive bonfires. Imagine that scene, flames lighting up the Mediterranean night sky, incinerating centuries of knowledge about direct connection with the divine. They burned books because they feared what was in them. But the true genius of this campaign, the cruel genius that makes me shudder, was the psychological warfare. They knew burning books wasn't enough. Rumors would still spread. To kill Sophia permanently, they had to assassinate the character representing her on earth, Mary Magdalene. This is Mary Magdalene, the one the Lord loved most, the spiritual companion. The only one who didn't run away when the Lord was crucified. In ancient texts, she was a giant of intellect. How do you bring down a woman that powerful? Easy. You turn her into a whore. The church pulled off the most successful and disgusting rebranding in history. Since the 6th century, they began weaving the story of the repentant whore. They equated her with the nameless, sinful woman in the Bible. Look at the cunning of it. It sent a chilling message to half the world's population for the next 2,000 years. Hey girls, it doesn't matter how wise you are, how deeply you connect with God. In the end, you are only defined by sex and sin. And you always need a man to dispense forgiveness. They turned the apostle to the apostles into a moral lesson on shame. Why did they do that? Not because they simply hated women, but because of fear. If Mary Magdalene remained Christ's equal, then women had the right to be priests. Women had the right to lead. Women had a voice, and their patriarchal power structure would collapse like a sandcastle before a tsunami. So, they buried her, under the guise of a courtesan. They buried Sophia, under the ashes of burned libraries. And you, my friend, have lived in the shadow of that lie your whole life. You think the absence of the feminine in religion is natural? No. It was designed, it was staged, and it was executed in blood. But do you know the thing about seeds? You can bury them in the ground, but that is exactly where they start to sprout. They thought they killed Sophia, but they simply pushed her underground. And when she went into the shadows, she became more dangerous than ever. We talked about character assassination. Now let's talk about physical destruction. Because when the lie about Mary Magdalene wasn't enough to silence Sophia, the empire decided to use fire and blood. Look at the Great Library of Alexandria, the greatest treasury of knowledge in the ancient world, home to over 400,000 scrolls. Those weren't just books. That was civilization's DNA, Gnostic Gospels, teachings on Sophia, astronomy, mathematics, all honoring the sacred feminine. And then they burned it. Not an accident, not a short circuit. It was a deliberate lobotomy of humanity. 415 AD, meet Hypatia, mathematician, philosopher, and the most dangerous woman to the church at that time. Why? Because she taught Platonic philosophy. She taught about beauty, about science, and most importantly, she was a woman with intellectual authority. A hysterical Christian mob, incited by bishops, dragged her out of her chariot. They stripped her naked. They used sharp pottery shards to flay her skin right on the street. That wasn't random violence. That was a message sent in blood. If you are a woman and you dare to think, this is your end. Hypatia's death marked the end of antiquity and the beginning of a true dark age. Not just dark in science, but dark in spirituality. This pattern repeated everywhere. Wherever the feminine wisdom was honored, wherever humans connected directly with the divine, the imperial church descended like a swarm of locusts. Why were they so terrified? Think like a mafia boss. If you know that the divine lives inside you, if you know that the kingdom of heaven is right here in your heart, then what do you need a priest for? What do you need the church for? They turned spirituality from a direct experience into an exclusive service. They became the mandatory middlemen. Want to go to heaven? Must buy a ticket through their gate. Want to be forgiven? Must kneel before them. They erased Sophia to sell you salvation. And the price was the imbalance of all humanity for 1,500 years. Women began to believe they were inferior. Men lost connection with intuition. We forgot that the divine has both a father and a mother. We became spiritual orphans, wandering in a house with only the rules of a strict father but lacking the love of a mother. But, and this is the biggest but in history, you can burn the library, you can kill Hypatia, you can smear Mary Magdalene, but you cannot kill an archetype. You cannot kill consciousness. Sophia didn't die. She simply went underground. Look at her, the Black Madonna. You will find her in the crypts of the greatest cathedrals in Europe, Chartres, Montserrat, Poland. The church says she's black because candle smoke stained her? Please, don't insult my intelligence. She is black because she is earth. She is the mystery of the night. She is Sophia hiding in plain sight. While the bishops preached submission from the pulpit, down in the crypt, people still whispered prayers to her. She survived in the love poems of the Sufi Muslims. She survived in the Jewish Sabbath under the name Shekinah. She survived in the visions of medieval mystic nuns like Hildegard von Bingen or Julian of Norwich. Women the church didn't dare touch because their aura was too brilliant. They spoke of God as a mother. They described the universe as a great womb. The church thought they had built a concrete wall over her. But Sophia is like the roots of an ancient tree. She grows through the concrete. She weaves through the cracks of dogma. And now, look around you. Look at the world today. The cracks in that concrete wall are growing. Texts buried in Egyptian caves have been found. Secrets in the Vatican archives are leaking. Sophia is not just waiting. She is rising. And the Vatican, they are trembling. Not because they are afraid of ghosts, but because they know when she returns, their power game that lasted 2 millennia will end. 13 leather-bound books, codices, sealed in a jar, buried for 1,600 years. They thought they had burned them all in Alexandria. They thought they had silenced Sophia forever. But the desert, the greatest keeper of secrets, protected her. These are not scrap paper. These are the keys the Vatican fears most. These texts, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and the Pistis Sophia text, returned at the exact moment humanity was most lost. Look at the panic of the church today. Do you think they worry because of empty pews on Sundays? Do you think they fear a lack of donations? Don't be so naive. The Vatican is the richest real estate corporation in the world. They don't lack money. What they fear is losing control. They fear the moment you realize the truth in those old tattered pages. That you don't need them. The return of Sophia is not a giant goddess appearing in the sky over Rome and shooting lightning at the Pope. That is cheap movie thinking. The return of Sophia is the awakening of consciousness. The church taught you that God is an old white man sitting on a throne somewhere in outer space, and you are a sinful worm down here, a master-slave model. But Sophia whispers in your ear something far more dangerous. You are a spark of God. You are wandering in this material world to experience, and your mission is to remember who you are. Listen closely. Sophia is not a deity for you to bow down to. She is the mirror reflecting your own soul. She is the bridge between your small self and the vast infinite. When you understand this, the entire 2,000-year power structure of the West will collapse. If God is in me, why must I confess to a priest? If wisdom is feminine, why do I accept a world ruled by authoritarian men? We are living in a disconnected world. Men are aggressive, women are objectified. We destroy the earth, the greatest mother, without mercy. That is the price of removing the divine feminine from the equation. We have the logos, logic, science, concrete, steel, but we lack Sophia, the nurturing, the empathy, and the womb where life sprouts. But the signs of the ancient prophecy are unmistakable. Can you feel it? The rise of new spirituality, the longing to return to the source, the fact that millions are leaving organized religions to seek truth within themselves. That is Sophia waking up from a long hibernation. She is creeping into pop culture, into social movements, into your very dreams. The Vatican knows this. Those old men in those marble halls know their time is up. They are like aging kings trying to command the tide to stop rising. Deep in their subconscious, they are seeking something more ancient, more primal. They are seeking the divine feminine, a concept that the medieval Catholic Church feared more than Satan himself. And in the south of France, amidst the majestic Pyrenees mountains, that fear turned into a real nightmare. Imagine a world where women are not the source of sin, but the embodiment of wisdom. Where you don't need a man in a fancy robe to speak to God for you. That is not a script for a modern sci-fi movie. That was reality in the land of the Cathars in the 12th century. The Cathars. The name sounds strange, doesn't it? But let me tell you, they were the greatest rebels history ever tried to erase. While the rest of Europe was drowning in the mud of feudalism and toxic patriarchy, the Cathars built a brilliant civilization based on equality. They honored Mary Magdalene, not as the repentant whore the church preached, but as the spiritual partner, the one who understood Jesus most deeply. They called it the restoration of Sophia consciousness, the wisdom of God in female form. Do you see the irony here? The Cathars practiced what Jesus actually taught, love, voluntary poverty, and direct connection with the divine. They completely bypassed the Vatican's bloated bureaucracy, and that was their death sentence. The Church doesn't care how much you love God. They care who you pay taxes to and who you bow your head to. When the Cathars proved that society could function beautifully, even flourish, based on feminine wisdom, they unwittingly triggered a deadly trap. They became an existential threat. The reaction of the Roman Church was not theological debate. Oh no, they didn't send scholars to drink tea and discuss philosophy. They sent an army. Pope Innocent III, a name that sounds so innocent, launched the Albigensian Crusade. This was the first crusade in history where Christians were ordered to slaughter other Christians, a systematic genocide campaign lasting 20 years. Come with me to Béziers, July 22nd, 1209. The city is under siege. Inside are thousands of people, men, women, children, the elderly, both Catholics and Cathars living together. When the Pope's army breached the city gates, a chilling question was posed to the papal legate, Arnaud Amalric. How do we distinguish the heretic Cathars from the faithful Catholic citizens? Arnaud Amalric's answer went down in history as one of the most brutal quotes of all time. Cadait eos, novit enim dominus qui sunt eius. Kill them all, for the Lord knows those that are his. Over 20,000 people were slaughtered in just a few hours. Blood flowed like rivers through the narrow streets of Béziers. They killed everyone, spared no one. Even those seeking refuge in the church, clinging to the feet of Jesus on the cross, were hacked to death on the spot. This was not war. This was the sheer panic of a terrified giant. The church feared the return of Sophia so much they were willing to burn the whole world to stop her. But the most tragic story lies not with those killed by mistake. It lies with the perfecti, the perfect ones of the Cathar sect. When captured, they were given a simple choice: renounce the belief in feminine wisdom or be burned alive. What would you do? Lie to survive or die for the truth? Hundreds of perfecti voluntarily stepped onto the pyre. They did not scream. They did not beg. They looked straight into the eyes of their executioners with a calmness that was chilling. That act sent a message more powerful than any sermon: that this body can be burned, but the understanding, Gnosis, within, cannot. That Sophia is not a god to worship, but a state of consciousness to live and die for. The church thought they had won. They wiped out a culture, killed over 1 million people, and flattened the Cathar strongholds. They thought that by spilling blood and fire, they could kill the divine feminine once and for all. But ironically, they forgot a fundamental law of nature. You can cut all the flowers, but you cannot stop the spring. They tried to bury her, but they didn't know that she was a seed. But look closer. They were trolled in the most painful prank in history. Right under the noses of the bishops, right on the cold stone walls where they preached submission, the Masons carved the entire story of Sophia. Look up at those rose windows. You think they are just for decoration? Mistake. Those are giant mandalas. That is the fractal geometry of the universe. That is the most ancient symbol of the goddess's womb, where light, spirit, enters and transforms into all things matter. The medieval Masons were not just workers. They were master satirists. They knew that parchment could be burned, books could be banned, but stone does not know how to lie. They hid her right inside the enemy's house. Every soaring arch was not a separation from the mundane world, but a longing to unite heaven and earth, the very thing the church always tried to separate. And when stone wasn't safe enough, they used stories. Do Do you think alchemy was just some bearded guys senilely trying to turn lead into gold to get rich? That was the perfect cover, a sophisticated intelligence code. Turning lead into gold was never about metal. It was about humans. Lead is the heavy, dark ego. Gold is the enlightened consciousness. And their biggest secret? The philosopher's stone. It is not a rock. It is the union of the sun, masculine, and the moon, feminine. Only when these two poles merge as one does immortality appear. They encoded the prophecy of Sophia's return into crazy chemical formulas, into tarot cards, and even into fairy tales told to children before bed. Sleeping Beauty, waiting for a kiss to wake up? That isn't a sappy romance. That is a metaphor for the soul, Sophia, sleeping soundly, waiting for human consciousness to wake it up. A genius survival plan. You cannot censor stories told by the fireplace. But history's sweetest revenge lies not in Europe. It lies beneath the hot sands of Egypt. Let's fast forward to 1945. When Muhammad Ali al-Samman smashed that jar, he didn't know he had just detonated a spiritual nuclear bomb. Inside were 13 leather-bound books, texts that had been buried for over 1,600 years to avoid the hunt of heresy hunters. This is the Nag Hammadi library, and among them there is a text that makes every conservative theologian break into a cold sweat. The thunder, perfect mind. Listen, this is not the voice of a gentle saint. This is the voice of Sophia, echoing from a 1,000-year-old grave, direct and defiant. I am the first and the last. I am the honored one and the scorned one. I am the whore and the holy one. I am the wife and the virgin. I am the mother and the daughter. I am the silence and the voice that speaks from the silence. The whore and the holy one? Are you shocked? The church hates this. Why? Because their brains, and the brains of Western society, are programmed to divide everything, good/bad, light/dark, male/female, sacred/profane. They need you to pick a side. They need you to hate the bad part and worship the good part. That is how they control you. But Sophia laughs in the face of that division. She declares, I am all. She is the great paradox. She embraces both light and shadow. She teaches that you cannot become holy by denying the whore or the shadow within yourself. You can only be whole when you accept it all. This is not a religious reform. This is a revolution of perception. It threatens to collapse the entire hypocritical moral foundation that our civilization has built over the last 2,000 years. The Cathars knew this. The alchemists knew this. And now, thanks to that shattered ceramic jar, we know this too. They thought they had buried her. But actually, they were just fermenting a rising more powerful than ever. And when this truth comes to light, the reaction of the modern world is even more interesting than the Middle Ages, because this time, it's not just mystics speaking up. This time, science has entered the game. In the next part, let's see what happens when a famous Swiss psychologist starts reading these forbidden texts and realizes that the wildest dreams of his patients are not crazy at all. In human history, there has never been a year so ironic. On the surface, we found a way to rip matter apart to create ultimate destruction, the atomic bomb. We realized we had the power of God to wipe out life. But deep down, right beneath the earth, another explosion also just occurred. Quieter, but the spiritual impact was no less significant. The Gnostic texts rose from the dust. Do you believe in coincidence? Carl Jung didn't. He called it synchronicity. Just as humanity stood on the brink of self-destruction by extreme masculine technology, war, bombs. Feminine wisdom, Sophia, reappeared like an emergency antidote. The universe has a truly dark sense of humor, doesn't it? It hands us two boxes at the same time. One contains death, and one contains awakening. And it whispers, choose humanity. The first person to realize this joke was not a priest, but a scientist, Carl Jung. While the Vatican was still busy labeling heresy on anything that smelled of feminism, Jung looked at these ancient texts and exclaimed, "Wait, this isn't religion, this is psychology." Jung discovered that the Cathars, or the Gnostics, did not worship demons at all. They were the first explorers of the subconscious. Jung's concept of anima, the feminine part hidden deep in the consciousness of every man, is Sophia dressed in the white lab coat of modern science. He proved that suppressing the feminine for the past 2,000 years was not just a historical crime, but a psychiatric catastrophe. When you deny half of your soul, you don't become holier. You become insane. And looking at the history of the 20th century with 2 bloody world wars, do you dare say that this humanity is normal? Jung threw a grenade at the wall separating science and spirituality. He told us, the demons you fear, they aren't in hell. They are in your heads because you locked Sophia in there. And then Elaine Pagels entered the stage. Her book, The Gnostic Gospels, is not just a research work, it is an indictment. Before Pagels, we were always taught that Orthodox Christianity won because they held the truth. The heretics lost because they were wrong. A beautiful fairy tale, and also truly a lie. Pagels exposed it all. She pointed out that this war was never about God. It was about politics. Bishop Irenaeus and his gang didn't hate the Gnostics because they were wrong. They hated the Gnostics because these people wouldn't listen. How do you build a religious empire and collect taxes if the congregation believes they can talk directly to God without intermediaries? The naked truth is, orthodoxy won, not because they were right, but because they were better organized. They had the army, they had the hierarchy, and they had the sword. Sophia was not defeated by reason. She was silenced by force. But you know, water wears down rock. Although silenced, this river of wisdom still flowed underground beneath Western civilization, weaving through cracks the church couldn't plaster over. Look at Hildegard von Bingen, a medieval nun. She didn't call it Sophia. She called it Viriditas, greening power. She saw God not as a white-bearded old man sitting on a throne judging, but as the vibrant life force in every blade of grass, every drop of dew, every beat of the universe. She hid those heretical visions right in her hymns, her religious paintings. She lived right in the heart of the church, but her soul belonged to Sophia. The Jewish Kabbalists, the Sufi mystics, and the alchemists. They were the fire keepers in the long night of the Middle Ages. They knew a secret that we are now starting to remember. The divine is not up high. The divine is right here, in connection. They protected this spark through thousands of years of storms. And now, when the biggest storm hits, the collapse of old systems, that spark is ready to flare up into a forest fire. Don't panic. The Cathars saw this 800 years ago. They called this the convergence. Ancient prophecies didn't speak of an apocalypse Hollywood style where zombies rise or meteors fall. No, that is too mundane. They spoke of the collapse of illusion. Look at it. The acceleration of communication over vast distances, that is the internet. That is the global neural network connecting us together, breaking every border of censorship. Secrets hidden for thousands of years are being exposed with just a click. Sophia isn't coming back on a cloud with blaring trumpets. She is coming back through fiber optic cables, through algorithms, and most importantly, through the shift in your own brain. And this is what makes the old men in the Vatican lose sleep. The biggest fear of a monopoly institution is not being overthrown by violence, because violence only breeds violence. That is their playground. They know it well. Their true fear is obsolescence. When humans realize that God is not inside a stone building, not inside a chalice, but right in their breath, in the connection between them and all things, then who needs a pope anymore? Who needs the middlemen selling tickets to heaven? When Sophia returns, she doesn't declare war. She simply makes the old system meaningless, just like the electric light bulb made the candle obsolete. You don't need to ban candles. People simply stop using them to light the way. That is the gentlest yet most brutal death for an empire that has existed for 2,000 years. The dissolution of power. Let's go back to those anonymous monks at Nag Hammadi for a moment. They didn't just bury books. They were sending a letter to the future. To us. With sharp spiritual intuition, they knew their generation wasn't ready. They knew the darkness of the Middle Ages was coming. So, they froze time. They protected the bloodline of wisdom, not the biological bloodline, Da Vinci Code style, but the bloodline of awareness, Gnosis. And they were right. It took 16 centuries for humanity to be mature enough, or desperate enough, to open this Pandora's box. 1945 was not random. When we found the way to self-destruct with atomic bombs, the universe threw us the final life preserver, Nag Hammadi. When we created the United Nations to seek external unity, Carl Jung and the Gnostic texts taught us how to seek internal unity. The rise of feminism, the concern for the environment, Gaia, the explosion of non-religious spirituality. These are not scattered movements. These are shards of the Sophia mirror piecing themselves back together. So, what does this story mean to you, the person sitting in front of the screen? You have been lied to that you are small, that you are sinful, that you need to be saved from the outside. But the Cathars died to tell you the opposite. The alchemists encoded their whole lives to whisper this into your ear. You are the place where heaven and earth meet. The division between male and female, between matter and spirit, between sacred and profane, all is just an illusion. The sacred marriage they spoke of doesn't happen in heaven. It happens right in your mind, when you accept both your light and your dark. When logic, masculine, shakes hands with intuition, feminine. When you view the world not as a resource to exploit, but as a living body to love. That is when Sophia comes home. And when that happens, no fire, no crusade, no dogma can extinguish you. They tried to kill a woman, but they forgot one thing. She is not a human. She is life. And life always finds a way. Imagine this. You try to lock a raging river inside a tight concrete box. You build walls, erect watchtowers, and write thousands of laws to forbid the water from flowing out. That is exactly what institutional Christianity, or to put it bluntly, the old patriarchal religious structure, tried to do with Sophia, with divine wisdom, with the sacred feminine. They thought they had buried her. They burned books. They hunted down the Gnostics. They declared texts containing the truth heresy and erased them from history. A perfect plan, right? But water always finds a way out. They didn't understand that you cannot kill an idea, especially when that idea is the foundation of the universe. That flow of wisdom, what the ancients called Sophia, did not die. It just changed the broadcast channel. It wove through the cracks. It exploded in Renaissance art, where beauty was worshipped equally with the divine. It whispered in the ears of romantic poets, urging them to seek the sacred in the deep forest instead of the cold cathedral. It spilled over through the transcendentalist movement in America. Each of these movements was not just an art trend. Don't be so naive. Those were eruptions of Sophia consciousness punching through the first bricks of the control wall. But, my friends, what we are witnessing right now, it is no longer small cracks. The dam is bursting wide open. This is not a mystical renaissance for a few dreamers. This is a seismic shift in human consciousness. It is happening right in front of your eyes, in every corner of civilization, if you are awake enough to see it. Look at feminist theology. Don't roll your eyes and think of political protests. It is much deeper than that. Scholars like Rosemary Radford Ruther or Elizabeth Schussler Fiorenza, they aren't just standing there knocking on the door asking to be priests. No, they are like forensic experts examining a crime scene. They are reopening the files. They are reconstructing history to point out an ironic truth. Women were not helpers in the original Jesus movement. They were the center. They were the ones holding the wisdom before the ruling machines erased their names with black ink. The exclusion of women from religious authority was not God's will, but a systematic human edit. And now, the original manuscript is being restored. And the most interesting thing? This wisdom isn't just returning in churches or temples. It is laughing in our faces from the most modern laboratories. Let's talk about quantum physics. For centuries, materialist science told us consciousness is just a byproduct of the brain, like smoke coming out of a motorcycle exhaust. But now, quantum physicists are scratching their heads and offering conclusions that would make ancient Gnostics smile triumphantly. Science is saying that consciousness is not created by matter. Consciousness is the foundation of reality. This isn't the rambling of some New Age group selling essential oils. This is advanced science shaking hands with ancient knowledge. Sophia is not a myth. She is the source code of this universe. Do you see the pieces falling into place? Look out at society. Old systems based on punishment, control, and greed are trembling. Why do we see the rise of restorative justice, where healing is more important than punishment? Why are there new economic models placing community happiness above charts of infinite growth? Why is education gradually abandoning forcing every child through the same mold? This is not an accident. Nothing is an accident. These are the first manifestations of Sophia consciousness permeating reality. It is wisdom that prioritizes wholeness over division, cooperation over domination, healing over control. And don't forget Mother Earth. The ecological movement isn't just about sorting trash or planting a few more trees. Fundamentally, it is the re-recognition of a truth that suppressed goddess religions preached from ancient times. The earth is a living entity, a sacred entity. When indigenous elders speak of Mother Earth, they aren't speaking in metaphors. They are connecting directly with Sophia. Even medicine is changing. From viewing the human body as a broken machine needing spare parts, we are shifting to holistic healing, body, mind, spirit. Fragmentation is giving way to unity. The signs are everywhere. What you thought were isolated events on the news, a green revolution here, a physics discovery there, a feminist movement over there, are actually a consistent pattern, a massive web being rewoven. Consciousness itself is evolving, and that evolution takes the form of a woman returning to her home after thousands of years of exile. Feminine wisdom is returning to rebalance a world that has been too drunk on toxic masculine power. Prophecies are not weather forecasts. They are promises, and that promise is being fulfilled right in your living room, right in your thoughts, bit by bit. But the question is, if this is a cosmic evolution, where is your role in this grand play? Are you the audience or the protagonist? To answer that, we must go deep into your own mind, into the darkest and most chaotic place, the place where Sophia left a treasure map. You see, the ancient Gnostics, those guys called heretics, they held a secret that modern psychologists took a century to tiptoe back to. They knew that the story of Sophia isn't a fairy tale to lull children to sleep. It isn't a myth about some strange goddess falling from the high heavens. It is your own biography. It is the script of your life, encoded in every cell. Let me explain. Every human soul is a miniature copy of Sophia. As above, so below. How do you start this life? In the womb, then the early years. That is the state of unconscious unity. You don't know where you end and the world begins. You are the universe, and the universe is you. Blissful, right? But that is the bliss of ignorance, just like Sophia in the pleroma, the fullness of heaven. But then, boom, growth requires separation. Sophia was forced to fall from heaven to understand herself. You too. You must be kicked out of the Garden of Eden of childhood. This is where things get interesting and cruel. Carl Jung, the grandfather of depth psychology, who I bet was a Gnostic in a white lab coat, called this the process of individuation. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? But in reality, it hurts like hell. It is the rebellion of puberty. It is the terrifying moment you realize your parents aren't supermen or gods, but just humans full of flaws and fears. It is when you start building thick walls around yourself. We call that the ego. You build this ego to protect yourself. You create boundaries. This is me, and that is you people. You separate yourself from the common flow. This isn't pathology. This is cosmic law. You must get lost to find yourself. But here, right at this point, is where humanity's play turns into a tragic comedy. Our society, this brilliant civilization, it is stuck. It is stuck hard in the separation stage. Look around. What do we celebrate? The self-made man, the lone wolf winner. We give medals to those with the biggest egos. We teach children that the ultimate goal of life is to separate themselves from the crowd, trample on others, to climb to the top of the ivory tower and scream, "I am king." We have been brainwashed to believe that the development of the ego is the final destination. We think the reinforced concrete wall we build around our hearts is a home, while in reality, it is a prison. A luxury prison, with Wi-Fi and air conditioning, but still a prison. And then, what happens when you finished building that wall? When you have fame, money, or at least the independence society praises? Crisis, depression, a feeling of emptiness down to the bone marrow at 3 a.m. Have you ever wondered why the most successful people are often the loneliest? Why you feel restless even when everything outside seems fine? Why new cars, fleeting romances, numbers in bank accounts no longer satisfy you? The psychiatrist will say you have anxiety disorder or a midlife crisis. They will prescribe you a few pills to get you back to work. But the ancient Gnostics would say otherwise. They would say, "Congratulations, you are starting to wake up. That painful feeling, that longing for some meaning beyond matter, that isn't a sickness. That is the call of Sophia. That is the signal from the mothership. She is calling you home." They understood that separation is just the middle stage. After separation, there must be conscious reunion, not returning to be a naive child. No, but an adult who has walked through darkness, has built an ego, and is now ready to integrate that ego into a greater wholeness. Think about the darkest periods in your life, the times you collapsed, the times you felt lost. Don't fear them. That is when the ego's wall is cracking. That is when Sophia's exile ends right in your mind. But the story doesn't stop with you individually. Remember the rule, as above, so below. If each of us individuals is going through this crisis, then imagine what is happening to all of humanity. This whole world is in a rebellious teenage phase, drunk on power and technology, thinking it can rule nature with an iron fist. But the party is ending, and the headache of collective maturity is about to hit. If every person's life is a miniature version of Sophia's journey, then where is humanity as a species in this story? I'll tell you, we are a bunch of bratty teenagers, drunk on newfound independence, having just moved out of our parents' house and currently trashing our first apartment. For thousands of years, humanity has been stuck in the separation stage. We developed what is called a brilliant civilization. We built empires. We created technology to bend nature to our will. We looked at the forest and saw only lumber. We looked at the river and saw only hydropower. We looked at the mountain and saw only ore mines. We deceived ourselves into thinking we were little gods, ruling the world with an iron fist and cold intellect. We pushed ourselves far away from the source, but like every wild party of youth, the bill will eventually come due, and the price to pay, well, it's more expensive than you think. Look at our social structure. Do you see the cracks? The rise of democracy, environmental movements, social justice campaigns. Don't think that's just politics. Those are the desperate efforts of the human collective trying to find the way back. That is when we begin to realize that true maturity is not about dominating others, but embracing them. But here is the biggest plot twist. A truth that the mechanized worldview of the West deliberately forgot, but the ancient Gnostics etched into their bones. Sophia's body, literally, is the earth. Let that sink in for a moment. Every ecosystem, every storm, every cycle of life and death, those are not inanimate physical phenomena. That is her wisdom. That is the living body of the goddess. Climate change, environmental crisis, don't be naive thinking that's just a technical problem. Don't think we just need to invent a giant CO2 vacuum and call it a day. No, that is the direct result of us cutting off our connection with the sacred feminine. When we treat the earth like a dead lump of matter to exploit, drill, and dump waste on, we are raping Sophia herself. Indigenous people, those whom modern civilization considers backward, they knew this. They call it Mother Earth. They maintain a respectful relationship. They never entered the frantic separation stage like we did. And now, as Sophia returns, we are shocked to realize that they were right all along. The symptoms are everywhere. Environmental destruction, social inequality, political polarization. You think they are separate issues? Wrong. They are all heads of the same monster, the fundamental division in human consciousness. But don't panic, or rather, panic consciously, because what you are seeing, this chaos, is not death. Those are birth pangs. We are witnessing the contractions of a new civilization trying to be born, a civilization born from reintegration between masculine and feminine, between individual and collective, between human and nature. What makes this era crazy and extraordinary is that this transition is happening on all three levels at once. Individual, you are in a spiritual crisis. Societal, old institutions are collapsing. Planetary, the earth is screaming for balance. The ancient prophecies about Sophia's return weren't talking about the year 2000 or 2012. They are talking about right now. The question is no longer, will the world change? It is changing already. whether you want it to or not. The question is, who will you be in this great labor? Will you be the midwife for a new world, or the one trying to shove the baby back into the womb out of fear of change? We have come a long way, from the broken dam of religion through the nightmare of the ego to the birth pangs of Mother Earth. Now what? You might be sitting there looking at the screen and wondering, Zorro, sounds great, but what the hell am I supposed to do now? How do I connect with this ancient wisdom when tomorrow I still have to wake up at 7 a.m. to go to work to pay bills? Good question. And here is the answer you won't like. You have to fire the middlemen. Look at how this world is designed. Everything has a middleman. You want to buy a house? Need a broker? You want justice? Need a lawyer? You want to go to heaven? You need a priest. Need holy books. Need commandments carved in stone and sent down from above. Traditional patriarchal religions taught you a very thorough lesson. You are not good enough. They told you wisdom lies outside of you, that you are a lost sheep needing a shepherd, that without them, you will go straight to hell. But Sophia is a rebel. She represents something far more radical, something power institutions fear most: direct knowing, or as the Gnostics called it, Gnosis. This isn't about becoming arrogant or atheist. This is about realizing that the divine Wi-Fi is already built into your hardware. You don't need the neighbor's password. You have the divine spark right in your heart. The biggest challenge isn't finding that wisdom. The challenge is filtering the noise. In your head right now, there are two voices, and the war between them is fiercer than any action movie. The first voice, I call it the social jailer. It is loud. It is never silent. It is the nagging chorus of should and should not. You should do this to be successful. You shouldn't do that, people will laugh. You are shameful. You are a failure. You know this voice, right? That isn't you. That is the tape recording of parents, teachers, bosses, and society playing back in your head. It judges, it fears, it wants you safe in the little box. And then there is something else, deeper, quieter, a voice that doesn't judge, doesn't scream. That is authentic wisdom. That is Sophia whispering through the cracks of the ego wall. When you touch it, you don't think you are right. You know. Just like you know you are in love, or know you are in pain. It is a naked truth, needing no logical justification, needing no one to stamp approval. It prioritizes wholeness over division. It chooses healing instead of control. This is the ultimate technology of the Gnostics, the ability to discern truth by direct experience, not by blind faith. Have you ever wondered why the modern world is so noisy? No, I'm not talking about the concrete drilling noise outside your window. I'm talking about the broken market inside your head. Dozens of to-do lists, fears about tomorrow, torment about yesterday. We are taught that to find the truth, we must think more, analyze harder, scream louder. But the Gnostics, those spiritual rebels whom mainstream history tried to erase for centuries, they laugh in the face of that idea. They knew a secret that those in power are terrified you might know. That is, you don't need a priest, a rule book, or a Google algorithm to know what to do. You need something far more dangerous: the ability to listen to the nothingness. Today, we will peel back the layers of an ancient technique, not the cliched slow down advice on Instagram. This is the mind technology the Gnostics used to hack into the universe's operating system. Let's talk about Sophia, the embodiment of divine wisdom, Hollywood and major religions often trick us into believing that when God or the divine speaks, it must be a blockbuster event. Dark clouds swirling, thunder crashing, or a burning bush and a booming voice echoing from above. Do as I say. Funny, the Gnostics call that fiction. According to ancient documents I've dug up, the voice of Sophia, or true wisdom, never screams. It has no ego. It is not dramatic. It operates more like an undercover agent than a general. It appears as a knowing so subtle that if you are busy scrolling through TikTok, you will miss it instantly. It is the strangely quiet feeling of rightness when you are on the right path, or conversely, an uncomfortable tension, an unexplained stomachache when you are betraying your true nature. You know that feeling, right? When you fake a laugh in a meaningless meeting and your gut feels like it wants to knot up, that isn't your lunch. That is Sophia saying, "Stop it, you fool." So, how do you hear this frequency amidst this crazy world? The Gnostics developed a method called listening to the silence. Wait, don't roll your eyes yet. This isn't meditation where you force your mind to shut up. Trying to force the brain to stop thinking is like trying to hold a ball underwater. The harder you press, the higher it shoots up and hits you straight in the face. That is completely counterproductive. Instead, imagine you are a detective sitting in a car, staking out a suspect. You don't scream, you don't intervene, you just observe. Here is the combat procedure. Consider it your homework after this video. Set aside 15 to 20 minutes. Alone. Turn off your phone. The world won't collapse in those 20 minutes. Sit down. Turn your attention inward. But, and this is key, do not analyze. Do not become the harsh judge in your head. Just be a witness. You will see thoughts rising. What's for dinner? The boss was annoying today. Why am I watching this Zorro guy's video? Screw them. Let them drift by like dark clouds in the sky or like traffic on the street. Don't block the cars and don't get in the car. What you are looking for is not those thoughts. You are looking for the background behind them, an open, silent awareness that is always there, but buried under the garbage of daily anxiety. When you catch that frequency of silence, and believe me, you will feel it. It is like diving below the noisy surface of the ocean where everything becomes still and deep blue. That is when you start the interrogation. Don't use your gritty, logical head to solve problems anymore. It's overloaded. Pose the question into that silent void. What should I do next? What is really going on here? Then, silence and wait. The answer won't come in the form of a PowerPoint plan. It comes as a gentle emotional shift, a strange synchronicity the next day, or simply a gradual clarity, like fog lifting in the morning. Let me tell you a real-life example, not a fairy tale. I know a woman, let's call her Anna. Anna stood at a devastating crossroads in her career. On one side was a sky-high paying job that drained her soul every day. On the other was a risky environmental restoration project. What did Anna do? She made Excel spreadsheets. She listed pros and cons. She asked everyone for opinions. The result? She was more confused, her head spinning like a top. Then she tried the Gnostic method. Every morning, instead of rushing to check email, she sat still with the silence and dropped a single question into it. What wants to emerge through my work? She didn't get a text from God, but within a few weeks, she noticed an undeniable energy pattern. Whenever she thought about the environmental project, she felt charged. Her body felt light. But when thinking about the old company, a heavy exhaustion weighed on her shoulders. That wasn't magic. That was data. Data from a wisdom deeper than the logical brain. She chose to follow that energy, And guess what? She didn't starve, but found true meaning. But that is just the beginning. Listening inside is one thing, but the Gnostics had another way to download data from the universe, a way where you have to step out of your four concrete walls. And that is when we must look at nature, not as a picnic spot, but as an open code book. That is the arrogance of modern humans. We think we are the pinnacle of evolution because we invented atomic bombs and TikTok. But for the Gnostics, nature is not scenery for weekend entertainment. It is Sophia. It is divine wisdom manifesting in 3D, 4K, full HD right before your eyes. Look at this giant. You think it just stands still? Mistake. You are looking at a supreme martial arts master. When the storm comes, humans build retaining walls, and walls collapse. And the tree? It knows how to bend. It knows that being too rigid means breaking. It roots deep into the dark earth so it can reach its branches up to the light of the sky. That is a lesson in balance no life coach course can teach you. The Gnostics didn't walk in the woods to relax. They went into the woods to study. They studied how an ecosystem operates. Here, there is no concept of unemployment, no waste, and certainly no economic crisis. I have burned countless economics textbooks for warmth. Just kidding, but they deserve it. Why? Because human economics is based on scarcity. And nature? It operates on abundance and reciprocity. In the forest, the death of one is the life of another. No one hoards resources. A tree doesn't suck up all the water in the forest to become a water billionaire. It shares through the underground fungal network. That is a biological internet that existed millions of years before humans knew how to use dial-up. Nature is living proof of the wisdom human consciousness is desperately seeking, the ability to create regenerative systems instead of depleting ones. We build disposable things to throw away. Nature builds eternal loops. So who is the unintelligent one here? So, what do you do with this information? Don't rush to sell your house and hide in the mountains. You don't have to become Tarzan to understand Sophia. Try a small experiment. Pick a tree. Any tree. Even that stunted tree in the concrete park near your house will do. It still contains the source code of the universe. Go there, but don't be a tourist. Go as a student. Sit down. Silence. And observe. Observe how it changes with the seasons, the law of growth and rest. We humans are obsessed with constant growth, working 24/7 until we have a stroke. The tree knows when to drop leaves, when to hibernate to store energy for spring. That is wisdom. Approach nature with respect, and you will find yourself downloading data directly from the source. You don't need Wi-Fi. But I have to warn you, the goal isn't to throw away your logical brain. Don't misunderstand. Rational thinking is a great tool. It's like a sharp knife. But a knife cannot decide for itself what to cut. It needs a hand to hold it. That hand is intuition. Indigenous cultures, tribes that Western civilization often considers backward, were light years ahead of us on this issue. They never separated the head and the heart. Look at their council circles. People speak from real experience, not from speeches drafted by a PR team. Look at their art, where truth is allowed to flow through creativity, uncensored by dry logic. Look at how they heal, healing the whole person, not just throwing a pill in your mouth to suppress symptoms and collect money. What you are trying to do is integrate. You want to use your sharp, analytical brain to navigate the world, but be guided by the deep intelligence of Sophia, the thing that can see patterns the naked eye misses. That is true awakening, not flying into the sky or seeing 7-colored halos, but sharp discernment in every moment of daily life. The ancient prophecy wasn't talking about a savior falling from the sky to save you. It was talking about you remembering who you are. You have the right to inherit this wisdom. It is in your genes, in your breath. And do you know what happens when you start remembering? You become dangerous. Dangerous to those who want to control you. Because when you see the world through Sophia's eyes, you start to realize the rottenness of the current system. And that is when things get interesting and scary. When Sophia consciousness starts creeping into society, we are witnessing a system glitch that the old order never anticipated. And believe me, it is making the rulers break into a cold sweat. Why? Because our entire civilization, what I call patriarchal consciousness, is built like a giant pyramid scheme. Look familiar? Schools, companies, governments, all operate on this principle. One person at the top, giving orders, thousands at the bottom, obeying. Your value is measured by your ability to dominate, control, or accumulate assets. That is why we have bosses who nitpick every minute employees spend in the bathroom, parents who treat children as private property, demanding absolute obedience, institutions that punish anyone who dares to think differently. This system lives on dividing us. It whispers in your ear, compete. Trample the guy next to you to grab the crumbs of recognition. But Sophia, this girl plays by a completely different rule. Sophia consciousness doesn't ask, how can I oppress this person? It asks, what kind of wisdom does this person carry that can help our whole community survive? It is not a ladder to climb, it is a network. Your value lies not in whom you control, but in how you help those around you grow. Sounds like empty theory? Let me take you to Oakland and Minneapolis, where these crazy social experiments are actually happening. Let's talk about justice. In the old system, when a kid commits a crime, we drag him to court. The judge sits up high, bangs the gavel, guilty, fine, jail. The goal is punishment. What does the kid learn? He learns to hate the system and become craftier next time. But look at what Sarah, a facilitator I know, did with restorative justice circles. The story goes like this. A teenager vandalized local shops. Under the old law, handcuffs, criminal record, ruined future. But Sarah put him in a circle. No high podium, no black-robed judge. Sitting there was the boy and the business owners he had vandalized. The boy waited for screaming, but no. The business owners started telling stories. They didn't talk about money to fix glass doors. They talked about fear, about the feeling of insecurity when stepping into their own shops, about sleepless nights. The teenager, who had originally bristled like a porcupine in defense, was suddenly disarmed. He didn't see enemies or nameless victims. He saw real humans, humans suffering because of his actions. That moment was more powerful than any prison sentence. The defense collapsed. The result? He not only agreed to pay compensation, which the court could also do. He asked, how can I help make this community better? That is Sophia in action. No one tried to fix the boy. No one tried to control anyone. They created a space for truth to emerge. And the solution arising from that collective wisdom is more sustainable than any punishment. When you see this work, you will understand why the elite tremble. If we can resolve conflict ourselves without judges, if we can govern our communities without authoritarian leaders, if we value each other as equals instead of pawns, then who is left for them to rule? The hierarchy collapses not because of violence. It collapses because it becomes redundant. Let's go to Ithaca, New York. Here, the residents did something that made central banks raise their eyebrows. They printed their own money, not Bitcoin, not virtual currency, a real paper currency, but backed by the trust and labor of the community, not public debt or inflation. This system prioritizes connection over profit. When a bakery is in trouble, the mechanic shop next door doesn't jump in to swallow it up to expand market share. They help, because they understand a truth that Wall Street has forgotten. If your neighbor starves, sooner or later, you will be robbed. The well-being of everyone is an interconnected web, not a race for survival. And education? God, that brick kiln. We have spent centuries stuffing children into pre-made molds. Sit still, obey, memorize. We treat children like empty vases that need to be filled with the stale knowledge of adults. But schools that dare to apply Sophia consciousness, they view each child as a seed that already contains the entire blueprint of a mighty oak tree. Teachers are not indoctrinators. They are gardeners. They water, they catch worms, but they don't try to turn an oak tree into a bamboo stalk. But here is where things get personal and uncomfortable. You can change the world, but can you change the way you argue with your lover? Imagine this scene. Your partner comes home, face looking like a thunderstorm. They throw their bag on the chair and start unleashing a tirade about their incompetent boss, about backstabbing colleagues. What is your patriarchal reaction? You become a plumber. You should do this. Why didn't you say that back to him? Come on, it's a small thing. Don't blow it out of proportion. You think you are helping, but actually you are silencing them. You are saying their emotions are a technical problem that needs to be fixed quickly so you can go back to watching TV. Sophia consciousness does it differently. It creates space. It doesn't jump in to fix. It says, "It sounds like you are feeling really unappreciated. That must be exhausting." You don't change the reality. You witness it. And the miracle is, when people feel truly heard, they find the solution themselves. They don't need your wise advice. They need your presence. I know, sounds weak, right? Oh, Zorro, are you telling me to become a doormat? Mistake. This is the most effective conflict resolution method I have ever seen. Look at a housing cooperative in Portland. The issue: pets. Side A. Dogs and cats are noisy, dirty. Ban them all. Side B. Dogs and cats are family, freedom forever. If voting by traditional democracy, 51% win, 49% lose and hold a grudge, the community breaks, but they use the council process. Everyone speaks. Everyone listens. No interrupting, no debating. And the solution emerged from that shared space. Pet-friendly apartments were zoned separately, accompanied by a shared playground. Community connection increased. No one lost. That is the power of collective wisdom that the individual ego could never think of. From the corporate boardroom, where the boss is no longer a warden but an awakener of potential, to the hospital, where the doctor is no longer a mechanic fixing a car, but a partner in healing. Everything is changing. But listen closely to my final warning. There will be resistance. When you start living this way, when you refuse to compete, refuse to control, and start listening, those still stuck in the old matrix will panic. They will call you naive. They will say you are weak. They will mock you as a tree-hugging hippie. Don't mind them. That is the screaming of a dying system. They fear you because you no longer play by their rules. You cannot be bought with power, and you cannot be threatened with isolation. You have reconnected with Sophia. You have found the true national treasure, and it isn't in any catacomb. It lies right in the silence between your two heartbeats. They look at your openness, the way you reach out to cooperate, and what do they call it? Weakness, naivety, not skilled enough to survive in this dog-eat-dog world. They, the ones controlling the chessboard, want you to believe that to survive you must bare your fangs and claws, you must trample on others. But let me tell you a secret they fear most. Your weakness is actually a dagger held right at the throat of this system. The key doesn't lie in you trying to change anyone. Don't waste your energy. You are not a missionary, and certainly not the moral police. You are here to embody Sophia consciousness. Sounds religious, huh? Don't worry, I'm not planning to preach. Sophia here is not a saint on an altar. It is the state when you are truly there. When you stop trying to fix others and simply listen. No judgment, no calculation, just presence. Do you know what happens when you do that? The opponent will panic. Human defense mechanisms are designed to resist attack, not understanding. When they feel truly seen, their shield automatically drops. That is when you win. Not by a fist, but by disarming them right in their minds. And this is exactly what makes them, those whose power depends on keeping us divided, lose sleep every night. Look around you. Don't look at your phone. Look out the window. This old world, it is cracking. Not by bombs, but it is rotting from the inside. The current system operates on fear and competition. You have to kill him before he kills you. But when millions of people start applying that Sophia tactic I just mentioned, listening instead of shouting, connecting instead of dividing, then the fuel for this power machine is cut off. We are talking about a transformation in millions of personal relationships. No grand manifestos, no speeches in the square, just the deadly silence of a system gradually losing control. Stop. Stop that thought right now. When I talk about New Earth or the return of Sophia, please don't let your mind drift to sci-fi movies or escapist fantasies. We are not packing bags to fly to Mars. We are also not waiting for an alien spaceship to come pick us up. What the hell is New Earth, if not a new planet? It is where you are standing right now, but with a completely different operating system. It is the healing for the deep wound that has torn humanity apart for thousands of years. Separation. Remember, how were you taught since childhood? You must choose, either be a realist or be a dreamer. Care for yourself or serve others. Believe in science or believe in spirituality. We are forced to pick a side, and that choice itself is a trap. That is a symptom of a fragmented consciousness, a form of collective amnesia that the Gnostics warned about ages ago. You cannot use laws to force wholeness. You cannot protest to demand harmony. And sorry to my meditating friends, sitting cross-legged might not get you there either if your mind is still trying to escape this world. What we need is Gnosis, not book knowledge, not degrees. Gnosis is intuitive understanding, soaked into every cell, an electric shock running down the spine telling you, this reality is a play, and I just remembered my role. This is where things get interesting and dangerous. When a person wakes up from this sleepwalking, when they combine the cool head of reason and the hot heart of intuition, they become a living tuning fork. You know a tuning fork? When one vibrates, others around it automatically vibrate at the same frequency. That is physics, not magic. Your awakening, it is contagious, and that is the nightmare of those who want to keep us in a slumber. But how does this vibration destroy reinforced concrete power structures? How do farmers, doctors, and even blockchain relate to this? Oh, you haven't seen it all yet? The most ironic truth is still ahead. Hold tight to your seat. We have only just begun peeling back the first layer. Look at our track record. Climate change? That is the price to pay when we view Mother Nature as an endless warehouse to loot, not a living body we are parasitizing. Social inequality? That is when we are blinded, no longer seeing the divinity in the eyes of the person opposite us, only seeing their wallet. Political polarization? The sick fear of having to face a different opinion. Experts call these separate crises. They organize climate conferences in 5-star hotels, discussing poverty over lobster buffets. Mistake. All these things are not different diseases. They are symptoms of the same brain tumor. The division in consciousness, a form of collective schizophrenia. We have separated spirit from matter, separated the self from the collective. And the result? A civilization in its death throes. But hold back your pessimism a bit. If I told you that what we are seeing, the chaos, the violence, the collapse of old systems, is not a sign of death? Imagine a woman in labor. Blood, sweat, tears, heart-rending screams. If an alien looked at that scene without understanding biology, they would think she was dying. But no. A new life is thrashing to be born. Our world is in labor. And believe me, birth has never been a clean or comfortable process. What is being born? A hybrid civilization, where the masculine principle, reason, structure, finally bows to invite the feminine principle, intuition, compassion, to dance. Where cold science shakes hands with ancient wisdom. Sound vague? All right. Let me show you where these hybrid children are hiding. They aren't in the clouds. They are right beneath your feet. You think agriculture is just hoeing the earth? Big mistake. Pioneer farmers are combining the most advanced soil science with 1,000-year-old indigenous wisdom. They don't exploit the soil. They heal it. That is regenerative agriculture. You think doctors only know how to prescribe Western medicine? Look at hospitals where cutting-edge medical technology is shaking hands with holistic healing methods. They don't just treat the disease, they treat the human. Education, economics, and, oh yes, even the scariest thing, technology, blockchain. Don't just think of Bitcoin or crypto scams. Look at its essence, a decentralized governance system. No one is king, everything is transparent. A nightmare for dictators wanting to control information. Artificial intelligence, AI. Instead of just teaching it to write code, development teams are bringing ethicists and philosophers into the game. The old model, Earth is a mine to dig, humans are cogs to turn, is being replaced. New style businesses don't just ask how much profit. They ask, how many rivers did we kill to get this profit? And here is the catalyst for this explosion. Connection. Never before in history could a monk in Tibet share his enlightenment with a neuroscientist in California in real time. Ancient Vedas are shaking hands with quantum physics. The wisdom of Native American tribes is reshaping modern urban planning. The internet, the thing we usually use to watch cats and argue, is actually acting as the nervous system of this new Earth. It allows streams of wisdom to intersect, collide, and merge. But don't pop the champagne just yet. You think the old system, the Tyrannosaurus Rexes holding power, will sit still and watch this new world be born? No, they are watching. They are afraid. And when a beast is cornered, that is when it becomes most dangerous. The rise of Sophia consciousness, the awakening of wholeness. That is an existential threat to those living on division. And the counterattack has begun. They will panic, and they will counterattack. The more people realize their wholeness and interconnection, the more immune they become to old manipulation tricks. You cannot scare a person who no longer fears lack. You cannot divide people who have seen the connection. This is a death sentence for business models based on scarcity and control. This is why everything looks crazier than ever. This resistance is not a sign of strength. It is a death throw. But here is history's funniest plot twist. The suppression itself is pouring fuel on the fire of awakening. This is the paradox. They don't understand. Every effort to extinguish consciousness only makes it flare up stronger. Every crisis they create only exposes the incompetence and obsolescence of the old system. Every collapse creates a vacuum for the new to emerge. Where are we heading? A mature civilization. Sounds far-fetched, right? But imagine, children taught they are unique, but also an indispensable piece of the big picture. Economics is no longer a sink or swim war, but a symbiosis with natural processes. Political decisions are made based on the question, how does this affect the next 7 generations? Not, how much will I make this term? That is not a utopian illusion. That is the inevitability of evolution. The old consciousness of separation has reached its biological limit. It is destroying the host, Earth. Sophia, or life, is evolving towards the more complex, the more beautiful. And you are not just a movie audience member. You are the main actor. Let's be honest with each other. Why are you watching this video? Why are you drawn to ancient mysteries that mainstream forces want to bury? Why do you feel restless, feeling that this eat, sleep, work, die life script is missing something? That isn't you being depressed or a failure. That is Sophia stirring inside you. She refuses to let you accept half-truths. Every time you feel a flash of understanding beyond what is taught in school, every time you see the sacred right in the most mundane things, that is when you are participating in the return. And here is what religious and political institutions fear most. You don't need them to connect with the divine. You don't need a middleman. What does materialist science call this? Coincidence, survival instinct, or worse, delusion. But look closely. A mother knows her child is in danger even without hearing anything. A businessman changes driving direction because of an invisible hunch. An artist becomes a conduit for an alien source of creativity. This isn't luck. These are glitches in the matrix of the material world, where Sophia's wisdom reveals itself. That is proof that a deeper intelligence is operating outside your small ego. The same wisdom the ancients called Sophia, the bridge between the transcendent and the immanent. Your spiritual thirst will never be quenched by religions telling you to loathe this physical body to get to heaven, nor will it be quenched by the New Age trend telling you to float away from reality. Sophia realizes that the divine manifests through matter, not against it. The light in your child's eyes, the beauty of the morning trees, the feeling of coming home when connecting with a soulmate. That is not a distraction. That is truth wearing the clothes of everyday life. And if you have ever experienced those moments, congratulations, you are a sleeper agent of this awakening. Waiting for a Messiah to descend in blinding glory? Waiting for a genius leader to clean up this mess? Or waiting for aliens to come rescue humanity from its own stupidity? Wake up. The prophecy never spoke of an external Superman. That was the biggest scam in religious history. The Messiah is looking at me through this screen. The true prophecy is about consciousness, the ability to create a divine civilization, rising through ordinary people. The stubborn, headstrong ones, refusing to accept that this world is all there is. You are part of a massive, secret society. No membership card, no password, no mysterious hooded rituals in underground bunkers. This secret society spans every culture, every era. Anyone who has ever realized that the boundary between sacred and profane is fake is a member. I hear the doubt in your head. Zorro? Sounds cheesy. How can these trivial things change the world? That very doubt is proof of how thoroughly you have been brainwashed. They taught you that truth must be complex, must be distant, must be in thick Latin books or expensive retreats in the Himalayas. Mistake. Sophia consciousness chooses the most careful hiding place, the ordinary, because that is where life actually happens. When you act out of compassion, even when it is inconvenient for you, when you create something beautiful just because beauty wants to be born, you are becoming a conduit. You don't change the world by smashing it. You change it by embedding the frequency of the divine into the smallest actions. So, what is the next step? Don't worry, I'm not selling a course. Start paying attention to the nudges. When you have a hunch to call someone, when you want to turn down an unfamiliar road, when a crazy idea appears in your head, don't brush it off. Don't say, just a coincidence. Respect it as an urgent message from headquarters. Watch for synchronicities. You need a book, and suddenly someone gifts it to you. You need an answer, and a song on the radio plays that exact line. This is not magical thinking. This is proof of a network of intelligence operating underground. And most importantly, trust the love that wants to manifest through you, whether you are a plumber, a programmer, or a homemaker. Sophia doesn't care about your job title. She cares about how you do it. And here is the final secret, the reason why this video might make some powerful people very uncomfortable. The terror of the Vatican, or any control system, is not losing money or losing land. Their biggest fear is, you realize you don't need them. They are the middlemen. And in the economy of the new earth, the middleman is fired. You have a direct hotline connecting to the source. Divinity is pre-installed in your operating system already. You don't need to buy a license from anyone. We have come a long way. If you are still watching at this moment, it is not random. There is something in you that has recognized this truth, beyond every layer of logic or prejudice. That spark of recognition is the very thing connecting you to the invisible community that has kept the human flame alive through thousands of years of dark nights. I don't need you to like or subscribe if you don't want to, but I need you to confirm one thing. If this frequency resonates with you, if you feel that Gnosis vibrating in your bones, leave a comment below. I understand. Not because you agree with me, but because you are sending a confirmation signal to the universe saying, I have remembered who I am. Welcome back to the game.